If I had known that one ignored glance could nearly destroy my career, I would have stayed home that night. My name is Laura. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. For the past 3 years, I've worked as a senior event coordinator for the Voss Marinas and Resorts chain, one of the top luxury resort brands in the country, or at least I did, until this morning. It was just after 7 when I got into the office. I was halfway through sorting contracts for the International Tourism and Diplomacy Conference when I heard the sharp click of stilettos down the marble hall. A few seconds later, the glass door burst open. "Get up," Selene Voss snapped. I barely had time to stand before she was in my face, immaculate in a silk blazer and diamond studs that probably cost more than my car. Her lipstick was still perfect from the night before. "Do you think it's acceptable," she began, her voice cold and rehearsed, "to openly insult me in front of donors at the Starlight Gala?" I blinked. I'm sorry." Her eyes narrowed. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." I genuinely didn't. I'd been working the charity gala all night, making sure the valet team didn't misplace any Bentleys and that the vegan canapés didn't run out. I hardly had time to talk to anyone outside the vendor team. Selene stepped closer. "You snubbed me," she hissed. "I walked by your table and you didn't stand, not even a nod. I was humiliated in front of international guests, diplomats, CEOs, all because you decided to act like a petty little servant. Selene, that's Mrs. Voss to you." My stomach turned. This couldn't be happening. I hadn't even noticed her pass by. If I didn't stand, it wasn't intentional. I was probably managing yet another catering emergency. She crossed her arms. "My family doesn't tolerate disrespect." Before I could say another word, her father-in-law, Marcus Voss, the CEO and founder of the resort chain, appeared in the doorway. "Laura," he said, not unkindly, but distant. A word. I followed him down the hall, past the portraits of award-winning resort openings and billion-dollar expansions, into the executive boardroom. He gestured for me to sit. "Selene is upset," he began. "You know how appearances are everything in this business." "She accused me of snubbing her," I said carefully. "I didn't even see her." He didn't argue, he just looked tired. "You've been with us a long time. You've done excellent work, but family politics are delicate. If it comes down to her versus an employee..." I felt it then, my career slipping out from under me over something absurd. A woman I barely interacted with had the power to end everything I'd built. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. Then I cleared my throat and looked him in the eye. "I understand," I said. "But I think you should know. There's something else at play here." He raised a brow. "I've worked with Selene before," I said, voice steady. "In a different context, one that might make you rethink everything." He leaned forward. "Go on." And just like that, the balance of power started to shift. 8 months before all that, I was sitting in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, staring at my credit card balance and the latest notice from my student loan provider. Another friendly reminder that grace periods don't last forever. That was when I saw the job posting. It was buried deep in the listings, under a finishing school's website, tucked between ads for golf etiquette courses and private ballet intensives. A part-time gig for a confidential cultural coach for high-net-worth clients. $400 per 90-minute session. Flexible hours. Absolute discretion required. I stared at it for a long time. Then I clicked apply. A week later, I was standing in a mirrored studio in West Palm Beach, my hair in a tight bun, tortoiseshell glasses perched on my nose, and a clipboard with the name Laura Jensen clipped to the front. I didn't lie exactly. Laura Jensen was my maiden name, but in my line of work and given how small the luxury event circuit could be, I needed a layer of separation. At the resort, I was Laura Covington, the behind-the-scenes miracle worker. Here, I was just the polished etiquette coach with an Ivy League tone and ballet-perfect posture. The client? A woman who introduced herself only as Serena. She was tall, sharply dressed, and instantly cold. She didn't shake my hand. She glanced at my outfit, barely acknowledging me, and gestured toward the white leather sofa like I was housekeeping. "Coffee," she said flatly, pointing toward the kitchen corner. 2 sugars, no cream. I remember blinking. I wasn't there to serve her coffee. but I also wasn't about to blow $400 a session by making a scene. So I brought the damn coffee. From the first lesson, it was obvious. Serena had no idea what she was doing. She said she wanted to master high-tier event hosting. When I pressed her, she confessed she had a series of upcoming galas and fundraisers and needed to not look stupid in front of international guests. "Teach me everything," she said, not as a request, but an order. So I did. Twice a week, I met her in that sleek white condo. We covered everything: cultural table protocol, how to hold a wine glass depending on region, when to bow versus shake hands, how to greet a Japanese ambassador without causing offense. She took notes obsessively. And still, she didn't absorb a thing unless I spoon-fed it to her in script form. By the third session, I started to piece it together. This woman, Serena, wasn't just wealthy. She was trying to become something. She wanted the illusion of grace, not the work behind it. I couldn't figure out where I'd seen her before, not until that one slip during our 6th session, when she took a phone call on speaker by accident. Someone called her Selena, and just like that, it clicked. She wasn't some anonymous heiress. She was Celine Voss, daughter-in-law of the man who signed my paycheck. Once I knew who she really was, everything fell into place. Celine Voss, the resort chain's glamorous daughter-in-law, public relations darling, social media staple, magazine-featured socialite. But in private, she was floundering. She had the title, the clothes, the husband, but none of the instincts. None of the polish she pretended came naturally. I kept showing up twice a week, kept calling her Serena, kept handing her meticulously prepared etiquette scripts that she never fully understood. "Just give me the phrases I need to say," she would tell me, waving off actual explanation, not the background. So I did. I made laminated cheat sheets for her, color-coded note cards labeled formal dinner, Japanese delegation, Arabic business greeting, French philanthropy brunch. I even built her an audio library of pronunciation guides. She memorized them the way a student crams for a final, mechanical and hollow. There were moments I felt sorry for her. I could tell how badly she wanted to be more than a trophy wife. She dropped hints all the time, how she was trying to build her own brand, how she didn't want to just be the +1 anymore. She said things like, "People only take me seriously when I'm holding a martini and standing next to Marcus." She thought if she could master hosting protocol, she could transform into someone powerful. But I also saw the other side, the one that made me bite my tongue more than once. The way she treated servers like wallpaper, how she would toss her heels across the room and tell me to fetch them. The time she asked me if ethnic handshakes were optional. I remember blinking at her, trying to swallow the insult without letting it show. She didn't know the difference between respect and performance. To her, culture was costume. People were props. Still, I kept coaching her. Because the checks cleared. Because I needed the money. Because no one else in my life knew that Laura Jensen was feeding Celine Voss every polished move she made. Everything intensified after she found out about the Japanese investment delegation. A $70 million tourism development opportunity. The Voss family had been courting them for over a year. "Japanese businessmen are obsessed with manners, right?" she asked, pacing barefoot through her living room. "Like bowing and tea stuff?" I stared at her. "It's a bit more nuanced than that." She waved her hand. "Whatever, I just need to be perfect. Everyone's expecting me to host the opening dinner. I cannot screw this up." That was when the scripts turned into full-blown speeches. I spent hours designing an entire cultural choreography she could mimic. She practiced bowing in front of a mirror. I had to correct her 6 times before she stopped trying to curtsy. She thought she was learning to lead. But really, she was just repeating my lines. The Starlight Charity Gala was a black tie affair hosted right at our flagship resort in Key Largo. A velvet rope night packed with foreign investors, senators' wives, and people who wore their wealth like a fragrance. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to manage. I'd spent weeks coordinating the guest list, fire dancing permits, and the logistics of seating 11 ambassadors without sparking an international incident. But for once, I let myself dress up. A floor-length navy gown, soft curls, and contact lenses instead of glasses. I didn't look like Laura Jensen, the etiquette tutor. I didn't look like Laura Covington, the clipboard-carrying planner in flats and a headset. I looked polished, unrecognizable, even to myself. Everything was going smoothly, for a while. Then I saw her, Selene Voss, Serena in another life, swept into the ballroom in an ice blue gown with a slit so high it could start a diplomatic dispute. Her diamond earrings caught the light like bait, and her voice, louder than necessary, exaggerated in tone. Konbanwa, she said to a group of older Japanese investors, bowing far too low. Watashi wa totemo kufuku desu. I froze mid-step. First of all, she'd just announced, I am very blessed, using the wrong particle. Second, they hadn't even introduced themselves yet. And third, she didn't recognize me. She breezed right by. I thought I was safe. But then, of course, someone ruined it. Lara, my colleague Greg called from across the room, waving like an idiot. Over here, can you check the lighting rig again? Celine stopped mid-sentence. She turned her head slightly, eyes scanning. I quickly dipped behind a floral display, pretending to fuss with a Voss. My heart was hammering in my chest. She squinted, tilted her head, then shrugged and turned back to her guests. I watched from behind the centerpiece, half horrified and half thrilled. She didn't recognize me, not fully, but something registered. A twitch of discomfort, a sliver of suspicion. I stayed out of her line of sight the rest of the night, but I could feel it, that prickling awareness between us. The next morning, I'd find out exactly how she interpreted it. Not as a narrow escape, but as a deliberate insult. She thought I'd snubbed her. In truth, I'd just been trying not to be recognized as the woman who taught her how to hold a champagne flute. Celine came in like a storm. It was 8:12 a.m. when she marched into my office, heels sharp against the tile, silk coat flaring behind her like a cape. She didn't wait for an invitation. She didn't even look at me. You can pack your things, she said, tossing her designer clutch onto the chair by the door. You're done. I stayed seated. Excuse me? She turned, arms crossed, chin lifted. You know exactly what this is about. I forced a breath. Celine? It's Mrs. Voss, and you embarrassed me, at my event. You refused to acknowledge me, in front of investors, diplomats. You think people didn't notice? I bit the inside of my cheek. I was working the event. I wasn't even near your table. Don't play dumb. You looked me right in the eye and sat there like I was nothing. Like I wasn't part of this company. I have never been so humiliated. I stood slowly. You're upset? No, she snapped. I'm disrespected. You crossed a line. And as a member of this family, I'm well within my rights to ask for your termination. She said it like she was granting me a favor, like she expected me to grovel. I didn't. Instead, I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a slim navy folder. I placed it gently on the desk between us. What's that? She asked, frowning. I looked her in the eye. Proof. She didn't move. I opened the folder myself, flipping it open to the first printed screenshot. Her face, grainy from the condo's security footage, seated on that white couch, sipping coffee, while I, Lara Jensen, stood beside her with a binder. I'm not just some event coordinator, I said calmly. I'm the woman who's been tutoring you in international etiquette for the past 8 months, twice a week, for $400 a session. Her face drained of color. That's not. Oh, it is, I said. And I have video, voice recordings, notes with your handwriting, a full roster of files labeled under my legal maiden name, the name I used when you hired me in secret. I flipped to the next page. A still shot of her reciting my Japan investor script, word for word in her condo mirror. Everything you've ever said at a public event, you got from me. The door opened behind her. Marcus Voss stepped in, holding a folder of his own. He had apparently received the emailed files I sent 10 minutes earlier. He looked at Celine, then at me. I think, he said slowly, we should all sit down. Celine didn't move. Her jaw twitched. Her voice was barely a whisper. You set me up. No, I said softly. I just kept the receipts. She stared at me, furious, powerless, exposed. And for the first time since the gala, I felt in control. By Monday morning, the office felt different. People whispered when I walked by. Doors stayed slightly ajar. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew something had happened between Selene and me. And whatever it was, it hadn't gone her way. 2 days after the confrontation, I got the email. Subject: urgent. Assistance requested. Voss Japan Partnership Dinner. From Marcus Voss. It was short, polite, almost pleading. Lara, we need your support to ensure the success of Friday's cultural dinner with the Japanese delegation. Your expertise would be invaluable. Let's discuss compensation and role adjustment ASAP. Translation: Celine was floundering, and they needed the one person who actually knew what she was doing. Marcus called me into his office that afternoon. He looked tired. His tie was loose. His voice was the calm, desperate kind people use when they're holding a house of cards. I know things have been tense, he said. I sat with my arms folded. You mean since your daughter-in-law tried to get me fired? He gave a short, grim smile. Yes, about that. I owe you an apology. I didn't respond. He continued. We need you, Lara. This deal is huge. If we lose the Japanese investors, we lose a $70 million partnership. Celine, she's not prepared. She was never prepared, I said. She was reading scripts. She still is. He sighed. I know. That's why I'm asking you to step in, discreetly if possible. I considered it. Part of me wanted to say no, let it burn, let them choke on their own arrogance. But then I thought about the staff, the banquet crew, the junior planners, the payroll team, people who depended on this deal for their bonuses, for their job security. They didn't deserve to be collateral damage, so I agreed. With conditions. I'd get full creative control over the event, a salary bump, and no more interference from Celine. He agreed to everything. Friday night came quickly. The resort dining hall was transformed into a graceful fusion of Floridian coastal charm and Japanese formality. Bonsai centerpieces, custom place cards with hand-lettered kanji, a tea service imported from Kyoto, all planned by me. Celine walked in 20 minutes before the guests arrived. Pale, stiff, eyes darting like she'd just walked into a final exam she hadn't studied for. You're not hosting, I told her quietly. You're reading, she frowned. What do you mean? You'll give your opening remarks, then I'll take over. That was the deal. She didn't argue. At 7 p.m. sharp, the delegation entered. Celine stood, smiled, and read her greeting from the script I'd written. Her pronunciation was off, but passable. Then the lead investor asked her a simple, unscripted question in Japanese. She blinked. Twice. Then stammered. Could you repeat that? I stepped forward. Smiling, calm, fluent. I answered for her. The investor nodded, impressed. Celine stood awkwardly beside me, clutching her cue cards like a life raft. By dessert, it was clear to everyone. I wasn't the assistant. I was the reason the deal hadn't crashed. The next morning, the shift was unmistakable. The Japanese delegation sent a formal thank you note addressed to me, not Celine. They praised the precision of the dinner, the respectful tone, the attention to cultural detail. The final line read, "We look forward to future collaborations with Miss Covington." Not Mrs. Voss. The fallout came quickly. Marcus called me into his office again. He didn't waste time with small talk. They were very clear, he said, sliding a printed email across the desk. The investors requested that all future international correspondence be handled by you directly, not through the family. I nodded. Understood. He paused, then said it. The words I never thought I'd hear. You were right about Celine, about all of it, and frankly, we're lucky you didn't walk. I kept my expression neutral, but something in me settled. Later that day, I packed up my desk. Not because I was leaving, because I was moving, upstairs, into the corner office previously held by a man who was quietly restructured 2 days later. Celine? She wasn't fired. Not technically. She was reassigned. Stripped of event oversight, removed from press briefings, sidelined into a vague family liaison role that meant absolutely nothing. I passed her in the hallway once the following week. Her hair was perfect, her lips glossed, but her eyes? Tired, uncertain. Nice work at the dinner, she said, without meeting my gaze. I smiled politely. Thanks, I had a good tutor. She flinched, just a little, then kept walking. Word got around quickly. Staff who used to tiptoe around her now rolled their eyes when her name came up. Someone in accounting joked that Celine's new office had more orchids than influence. HR quietly stopped inviting her to leadership briefings. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Celine's power hadn't been taken. it had dissolved, exposed as the performance it was. And the more she tried to reclaim it, the more transparent it became. The following week, Marcus called me in again. "We'd like you to stay on," he said, "permanently, with expanded oversight." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," he said, sliding a contract across the desk, "you'll be reporting to the board, not to anyone named Voss." That was the day Celine stopped being a threat. And I stopped being just another name on the org chart. 3 months later, I was in Tokyo, seated at a long table inside a minimalist boardroom overlooking Shibuya Crossing. On my left sat a translator. On my right, 2 representatives from one of the largest tourism development groups in Asia. Across from me, a sleek young executive with a sterling reputation and a crisp navy tie leaned forward and said in near-perfect English, "We'd like to move forward with your proposal, Ms. Covington." Not the resort's proposal, not the Voss proposal, mine. The contract was worth $110 million, a full-service expansion of luxury eco-resorts along the Japanese coast, with Voss Resorts as the operational partner. Contingent on one clause, that I personally lead the international strategy team. I didn't blink. "I accept," I said, calm as ever. "And I'll ensure you're working only with staff who understand both hospitality and cultural diplomacy." They smiled. "We know." By the end of the week, the deal was signed. And just like that, I'd eclipsed everything Celine once bragged about. Her $70 million vanity dinner, a footnote. The investors she'd fumbled, now my direct partners. The board called a meeting the day I returned. They didn't waste time. "We're creating a new role," Marcus announced, voice measured but respectful. "Vice President of International Events and Partnerships." He slid a folder toward me. "It's yours if you want it." I opened the offer, read it silently. VP, a seat at the table, full control over global contracts, brand strategy, and my coworker, most importantly, staffing. "Does this mean I have the authority to restructure international operations?" I asked. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, you'll be managing your own department." I didn't smile. I didn't have to. "Then I accept." I walked out of that meeting and into my new office, a glass-walled space with a view of the marina and the corner of my old desk still visible 3 floors below. That afternoon, I called my team together. "I want to make something clear," I said. "Going forward, our work will speak for itself. No favoritism, no family games. We do this by the book, or not at all." They nodded, every single one of them. Word got around quickly. Celine, still clinging to her title, was quietly removed from international meetings. Her liaison role faded into silence. Even the executive holiday card left her name off this year's signatories. It didn't need to be dramatic. Arrogance always collapses under its own weight. I just made sure I wasn't standing underneath when it did. A few weeks ago, someone from HR told me Celine is taking lessons again. Different ones this time. Public speaking, media coaching, crisis control. Word is she's trying to rebrand herself as a wellness advocate. Something about inner elegance and feminine leadership. No one's buying it. The last investor dinner she tried to attend, she wasn't even on the guest list. Security called up to verify before letting her in. She stayed 20 minutes, smiled for a few photos, and left before dessert, alone. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence around her speaks volumes now. The polite nods, the way staff change the subject when her name comes up. People don't ridicule her openly, but they don't take her seriously either. And in her world, that's worse. She still walks like she owns the room, but rooms don't stop for her anymore. As for me, I've stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped waiting for the next power play. Because there isn't one, not anymore. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on the balcony of my office, the one with the view of the marina and the Voss family yacht docked 2 slips down, I think about how close I came to losing everything, over nothing, over someone else's ego. And yet, that same ego, the one that tried to cut me down, is what handed me the match that lit everything up. If Celine hadn't stormed into my office, if she hadn't pushed to have me fired, none of this would have come to light. Her need to control everything was the one thing she couldn't control. That's the irony. In trying to destroy me, she handed me the one thing I never had. Undeniable proof that I was the one doing all the real work. Now my name is on the contracts. My signature closes the deals, and my calendar, not hers, decides where the future of the brand goes next. Selena's fall wasn't revenge. It was gravity. And I'm just the one who kept climbing.